Today on Rescue USA, when a raging California wildfire heads straight for a crowded animal shelter, pet-loving police officers rush in.
Let's go for a ride, come on, come on.
And later, immediately after Hurricane Michael tore into the Florida Panhandle, two valiant volunteers bring some much-needed disaster relief.
They were amazing. They were absolutely amazing.
Hello? Is there anyone here? Do you need help? Hello?
A hero is someone who selflessly puts their own wants and needs aside for the greater good and safety of someone else.
Nestled in the rolling hills of Northern California lies the bustling city of Vacaville. Late one summer afternoon, the air quickly turned to smoke. A wall of flames raced toward the city, a wildfire burning everything in its path. As people fled for safety, the workers at an animal shelter were left to fend for themselves. Thankfully, two brave police officers put their lives on the line to help out some furry friends.
The Solano County SPCA has been a pillar of the community for more than 40 years, helping place animals in need of homes.
We are a nonprofit animal shelter. There's a lot of rehabilitation of animals to adopt them out. We do adoptions for dogs, cats, birds, snakes, hamsters, pretty much anything.
This is my second home. This shelter helped me build me into the person I am today, helped make me the officer I am today in regards to the way I deal with animals.
Yet on August 11, 2018, danger was looming over this pristine Northern California animal shelter.
As I came into work, I heard my supervisor and some of the other officers talking about the smoke plume that was coming in to go take a look at it.
Wildfires are a major concern for first responders in this part of the country. And unlike many other natural disasters, wildfires can be completely unpredictable.
We get fires here in Vacaville probably routinely every summer, but that one had the potential to really destroy a lot of homes and a lot of structures.
As the Nelson fire now raged toward Vacaville, firefighters were battling the blaze from all angles, and police officers were tasked with helping evacuate those trapped in the danger zone.
Some of the other officers on my shift went over to the Lagoon Valley area and started evacuating some of the more rural ranch areas, and also started looking for ways to save some of the livestock and the cattle that was trapped out there by the flames.
In wildfire situations, it's absolutely critical for our emergency responders to deploy their resources as wisely as possible. In this case, they were right on top of it.
My sergeant said, "Hey, can anybody see the flames that are on the other side of the hill?" And I looked up and I was right there and I was like, "I see the flames." And he was like, "The SPCA might need evacuations."
Since the shelter was already closed for the day, there were just 2 employees left, with more than 80 dogs and cats on the premises and a fast-moving fire closing in. Kennel manager Bridget Bloch was across town when she got an urgent call from her boss.
Basically, she said, "We have to evacuate, there's a fire, I need you to get here now." It took me about 5-ish minutes to get here, and I was stopped at the roadblock about half a mile down the street, and they weren't letting anyone else in.
The conditions were worsening by the minute.
When Officer Jennings and I got there, it was only the 2 of us and 2 other SPCA staff because it was after hours. The plume of smoke coming over the hill was getting closer, that it was windy, so I knew we probably didn't have much time before the flames were right there.
When everyone else is running out, our first responders are running in.
One of our senior officers, he stood on the backside of the hill and said, I'll wait here, and when the flames are close, I'm gonna tell you that's it, because we can't risk anybody's life.
All the animals know something's wrong. They hear the sirens, they feel the stress.
As smoke filled the sky in this peaceful community, the officers were faced with a rather stressful reality. They were informed that they might need to leave the shelter immediately.
Our sergeant actually had told us that we needed to leave and to go evacuate houses. which is understandable. There were people's, potential lives that were at risk.
I remember looking at Officer Jennings and saying, I don't think we're going to be able to get these animals out. Maybe we should just open up the doors and give them a chance to at least run for it.
An out-of-control wildfire was threatening the town of Vacaville, California. A crowded animal shelter lay right in harm's way.
It was just one of those crazy things where you knew you had a limited amount of time to get something done, and we just had to do what we could in the few minutes that we had.
Officers Stone and Jennings of the Vacaville Police Department raced against time to help evacuate helpless pets from a local animal shelter.
During that time, I remember just trying to put dogs anywhere that we could. I did get some kittens in the beginning as well.
As quickly as possible, the officers ushered as many animals out of the building as they physically could. Pets of all shapes and sizes, many of whom had already been rescued from other bad situations, were now being rescued again, this time from the threat of an approaching fire.
We were really lucky that a Humane Animal Services officer came with his truck, which fit a lot of animals.
I had a Great Pyrenees and a small little poodle thing stuffed in one side of my vehicle. I had a shepherd in the back with some kittens. Everybody was just everywhere.
It was kind of all hands on deck. They ended up grabbing, there was a woman driving by in a pickup truck, and they flagged her down. We're like, hey, we need your truck, come here. And so she pulled in and they loaded the back of her truck bed with crates.
Some other SPCA volunteers and some other community members came by with their vehicles, so we were able to load a whole bunch more animals into those extra vehicles and get them out. Everybody started working together because there's really just no way we could have done this by ourselves.
With the fire burning ever closer and the clock ticking down, Officers Stone and Jennings loaded up their own patrol cars with dogs as well.
Get in, let's go dog.
And miraculously, after those frantic few minutes of adrenaline-fueled teamwork, the SPCA shelter was emptied, with all the threatened animals now on the road to safety.
It was a big sigh of relief to be getting in my patrol car and driving away from those flames and not having to worry about them overtaking us.
As soon as we cleared the area, the fire department had showed up and started doing building protection, so that kind of made us feel better. As soon as we left, my sergeant's like, okay, get rid of the dogs. We got people to evacuate.
Officer Jennings and the volunteers did drop their animals off at a nearby staging area. However, Officer Stone continued to work the rest of her shift with some very special partners.
I actually had one small dog in my front seat and two larger dogs in the back. They actually seemed pretty happy back there, so I just immediately went over and helped with evacuations until my supervisor realized they were still in the car and was like, you should probably go give them back.
At the end of the day, all the animals were safe, thanks to the heroic actions of the police officers and the volunteers who helped them.
This is my home. I love the shelter. I will always love the shelter. I need to protect the animals. I consider all these animals here like my family.
Heroes are the best of humanity in the worst of times.
And thanks to the incredible work of the firefighters that day, the shelter was safe too, with the flames halted less than 50 yards away.
We walked the fence line, we were able to see how close it came to our buildings, and we just realized how lucky we were that the fire department and the police officers who helped evacuate and who were here to protect our buildings, we were just so thankful for them.
The Solano County SPCA will never forget these officers who truly saved the day, and not just because of what they did during the fire. After helping rescue more than 80 animals that day, Officer Carly Stone made a permanent connection.
This is actually Sean, the dog that was in the front seat as we drove away from the fire that day and is now the newest member of our family.
Mexico Beach, Florida, a tiny town on the Gulf of Mexico. Population just over 1,000. It is a popular spot for many Americans to vacation, and tropical storms are nothing new to the locals here. When a tropical storm brewing out in the Gulf rapidly grew into a major hurricane with winds over 150 miles per hour, logic would tell us it was not a storm to mess around with.
The panhandle of northern Florida is well known for its beautiful shoreline. And Carolyn Metcalf has loved living in Mexico Beach for more than 3 decades.
A nice little American safe community. Nobody ever bothered anybody. It was a great place to be.
But that prime location right on the water also gives Mexico Beach a front row seat to some pretty intense weather. Consequently, longtime locals like Carolyn and her son, Scott Cothran, sometimes make the mistake of a lifetime, thinking that they can ignore a hurricane warning.
Mexico Beach police officer came by about 6 or 6:15 at night to let us know that they were evacuating, and it was a mandatory evacuation. But they weren't going to drag us out by handcuffs if we didn't leave.
Hurricane Michael became the first Category 4 storm to make landfall in October in the last 64 years, ultimately claiming 36 lives and causing $15 billion in damage. It was the worst wake-up call Scott and Carolyn could have imagined.
The hurricanes that we have stayed through, it was just wind and rain, and then it was gone. And I thought that this one was going to be that way too. I now know that was not a smart idea.
Nobody knew that thing was going to grow into the monster that it did. So a lot of people that would have left if it had been a Category 4 that morning did not leave. When they woke up, it was too late for them to evacuate out.
I knew in 2 hours we weren't going to be able to get far enough away. So we just decided to stay and hope for the best. The winds really got really hard. We had a privacy fence in the backs, and they were folding over and over. And it was concrete in the ground with wood posts and everything. When the walls started shaking, she was like, oh my word. I noticed that the waters were already up and the cars were not parked there anymore.
Unfortunately, what we see in areas where people get a lot of extreme weather events is that they sometimes think they can tell when it's going to be safe to stay and when it's not.
I could describe it as would be a nuclear bomb went offshore.
For Carolyn and Scott, the harsh reality of the situation was now about to hit home, literally.
When I saw water coming in the front door, which is on the opposite side of where the water is supposed to be coming from, I knew we had to go upstairs because it was going to be flooded within minutes.
I really don't know how to describe it. It's water where there's never been water before. And it's coming in like if you're standing at the edge of the Gulf and it's a stormy day, and it doesn't stop. It just comes, and it gets higher and higher and higher. It absolutely chased us up the stairs.
Scott determined that his bedroom closet would be their best bet for shelter.
The closet was the only recourse, and the closet we ended up was the only reason that we still have our heads attached to our bodies, in my opinion.
As the epic hurricane decimated Mexico Beach, Carolyn's home of over 25 years was torn apart around mother and son.
We heard a crash, and I tried to open the door, and I could only open it about this much. I watched the entire roof peel away from us at the angle to where it wasn't going to fall on our head, and the wall leaned a little bit because just about that time, the floor started to sink from the bottom plate of the walls. We ended up on our closet door with walls falling down around us.
With winds lashing and water churning around them, Scott turned the closet door into a kind of life raft, wrapping himself around his mother to protect her from debris and the elements.
We just kept trying to find somewhere to be. God's grace, that's where we chose to be, and found that closet door, and we stuck with it. It was like a surfboard, kind of.
Mother and son rode out the storm surge on that door, holding on for dear life, sustaining cuts and bruises from the wreckage swirling around them.
I had to stay on that because at least halfway through the riding of the debris, her arms had no strength left.
After washing inland a good 100 yards, Scott and his mother made it to land. Still in shock, they were found by a storm-chasing cameraman.
What's your name?
Scott Kaufman is my mother, Carolyn Metcalf. Mexico Beach, I don't know. All I know is right here past the bridge. 42nd Street, there's one house that's all used to be on stilts. There's no stilts there, everything else is gone. It's just the entire Highway 98. I can't even see it all the way down past Parker. It's just debris all on the street.
In October 2018, Hurricane Michael hit land, laying waste to the Florida Panhandle and the tiny town of Mexico Beach. Carolyn Metcalf's home for more than 20 years was smashed to bits around her and her son Scott.
All of it's gone. Everything's gone, even cars.
They miraculously survived the storm, but were stranded and in need of medical attention.
There was nobody here. No one was here. There were some people from up that way who were seeing if they could get out, who had stayed also. But those were the only people we saw for hours.
While thousands were still fleeing this lethal hurricane, Jason, Maddie, and Christian Oakes, part of a disaster task force, were actually driving into the eye wall of this storm, risking their lives to save others.
We had to go through all kinds of crazy roads, you know, I mean, trees across the road. Sometimes we had to get out. We had wires tangled under our Jeeps, and we had to get out and drag them out.
So as we came over the bridge into Mexico Beach, there was no comms. We could only drive our vehicles maybe 30 yards or so over the bridge because of the piles of debris that were originally houses were now covering the streets.
As far as the amount of devastation, I had never seen anything like that. It was just utter destruction. Complete blocks wiped away.
The two friends had met and bonded over the course of previous rescue missions.
Hurricane Harvey actually came up in Texas. I saw just regular civilians, veterans, going out there with their own boats, rescuing people in Houston. I thought, well, I can do that. And it also brought in the camaraderie that I had in the military, and you felt like you had a bigger purpose.
I mean, we were doing a lot of stuff that not a lot of people will do. Found out I'm pretty good at not only doing the survivor type stuff that's needed in this, but also the logistics, the supplies, making the connections, making the calls, just doing what it takes to get things done.
Disasters never clock out, and neither do first responders.
Rolling into Mexico Beach after dark, Jason and Christian were the only first responders in town. Their services were in desperate need, with Carolyn and Scott bleeding and in shock.
The storm chaser had pulled us over and asked if we were search and rescue, and we're like, yeah, what's going on? He goes, well, there's a male and a female in this house just over the bridge on the left that were in need of medical attention. So as Jason and I are heading to check on Scott and his mother, we are having to use flashlights because it's pitch black.
Hello? Is there anyone here? Do you need help? Are there any injuries? Hello? Search and rescue. Do you need help?
So I didn't see the lights when he got there, but I heard the voices. And she was like, go see who that is.
They were first responders, and they were amazing. They were absolutely amazing.
We get in there, and Scott, he had a really bad gash on his finger. His mom had gotten a really bad gash on the right side of her head. We bandaged it up as best as we could. We cleaned it up to keep it from getting any infection.
I don't know what would have happened without them getting there, because the next people that came were the next day. I probably owe my life to both of them.
Carolyn and Scott have both been deeply affected by their life-threatening experience, and are profoundly grateful for these volunteer first responders who left their own families at home and put their lives on the line for them.
Every time I come back, it's different. It's not worse, but, you know, in a way worse and in a way not worse. One of the miraculous things is that no more lives were lost. And a lot of that is due to people like Christian and Jason.
I don't consider ourselves heroes. I just think we're cut from a different cloth, and we're just there to help.
Christian and Jason, in my opinion, are true heroes because that's not their normal job. They're not firefighters. They're not police officers. They're not EMTs. A hero is not measured by what you do. It's measured by your heart. Are you putting others' needs ahead of your own?
We're, just two guys in this story, but there are thousands of others, civilians from all across the country that risk their lives. And all it takes is you just deciding, I'm not just gonna watch this on TV, I'm gonna go down there and help people, because I can do that. I can give them a chance.
Everyone, at some point in their lives, needs to call on others for help. Here, as we've seen, the survivors of these natural disasters were extremely lucky to be saved right in the nick of time. They were thankful, as we all are, to have our first responders help us in our times of need.